Hi everyone, Sarah Pacaro. Today's video is going to be about trauma responses. This is my kindergarten artwork of the different trauma responses. We oftentimes talk about the fight, flight, freeze. There's a fourth one out there called fawn, which is the people pleaser, the fixer, the codependent, generally empath, all of those labels and people who identify with that connect with the fawning trauma response. Today, actually, we're going to be talking about the collapse trauma response. So flee, fight, freeze, and then collapse. And then the four ways that if you're experiencing the collapse trauma response, the way that it shows up and impacts you. So I specialize in working with people who are coming out of toxic, emotionally abusive relationships, narcissistic relationships. That was my long history and past and experience using these types of modalities to completely transform, break through, and heal in many, many areas of my life. So today we're going to be going into the response of the flee, fight, and freeze and collapse, getting into more of what the collapse response looks like, the dissociation, the disconnection, and obviously, if you want to learn more about how you can use hypnosis and rapid transformational therapy to rewire, reprogram, go into those inner parts of you that have been traumatized, that have been wounded, that need healing, I would love to connect with you and talk to you more personally about possibly working together one-on-one to take you on that journey. I invite you to head over to my website after this video and see what other people who have experienced emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse have said about using these modalities to work together. Until then, let's get into the ways that our nervous system responds to trauma. And this information does come from the NICABM, which is the National Institute for the Clinical Application of Behavioral Medicine. So I'm not just pulling it out of thin air. It has been researched, proven. So we're going to dive into that today. So how does your nervous system figure out how to respond in a crisis? And a crisis can be anything. It can be what I call big T traumas or little T traumas. Big T traumas are obviously significant things, and it can be very, very emotionally traumatic things. It can be something like a car accident where now you're paralyzed and you're afraid to even get in your car and drive, or it can be traumas that happened to you when you were younger, when you were an adult. I mean, it's happening all the time. Our nervous system is there to keep us regulated and to have us know when something is safe and when something's not safe. The problem is when you have these experiences and your nervous system is responding and wanting to flee and wanting to fight and wanting to freeze all the time in normal situations, in everyday situations, like when you're at work or when you get invited to go out somewhere with your friends. That is when it's dysregulated and it's off. Something is off somewhere. And we're going to talk about why that is today. So after a split second, there's this unconscious processing that's designed to choose the best option to keep you safe. Your body and your mind are innately intelligent and are always working to protect you, always working to keep you safe. The problem is when you've had one of these series of events, multitude of events in the past, regardless of how seemingly significant or insignificant they are today, your body can still be responding in one of these ways. It can have you want to run away from situations, fight people, and that's not always physically, it can be verbally. If you're quick to anger and you just feel this rage and anger and tension come up inside of you, and it's like fighting with people, even people that you love, it's like, why do I do that? That's because that's that fight response kicking in into your nervous system. Or you just freeze and you feel like the whole, cat got your tongue, feeling like your throat is closing up. Sometimes physically it feels dry, scratchy, like you can't speak. Your mind is thinking of the words to say, and it's saying to you, hey, idiot, say that. And you're like, and you just feel frozen, you feel paralyzed. So we're going to go in those today. So your mind works, your nervous system, the way that it works is possible threat. It can identify a threat. And like I said, this can be real or unreal. Sometimes it happens when there's no actual literal physical threat. So use the analogy a lot of like a lion chasing you or something, right? Well, they're not lions chasing us in today's world, but our body responds as if, oh my gosh, life or death, this lion is chasing me, it's going to kill me. That's the threat that can be identified. So it identifies a threat, and maybe it's something like a text message that you get. Hey, can we talk? And your body goes, Ooh, what's going to happen? Maybe the text message is a threat. Maybe it's your boss walking by and going, "Hey," and you're like, "Oh, what do they want?" Right? And then you want to run away, you want to flee, you want to escape, or you're like, "Hey, what?" And it's like, I was just saying, "Hey." And you're kind of fighting back, your voice, your tone is agitated, or you freeze and you're, "Oh my God, what do they want?" So sometimes it's not a real threat like a lion chasing you. Sometimes it's like a text message or your boss walking by, and your body still has this response. It wants to flee or escape, like my airplane, or it wants to fight. That's a boxing glove. If you couldn't tell, it wants to fight back, not always physically, verbally as well. That's generally more common, or freeze, and we're going to talk about why that happens. Or you get this feeling of collapse, and maybe it's not an actual collapse, like if you're, a fear or a threat of needles, and when the needle gets close to you, you pass out, right, and you collapse. That's we're going to get more into that later. But here's what happens: so your body and your mind identify a threat, and then one of these things happens. Your nervous system goes, ah. And so maybe you want to flee, you want to run away, you want to get away, you want to escape. You can't get away fast enough, you can't go far enough from the threat, and you might be able to escape it or avoid interacting with it entirely. But what if it, I mean, it's a text message, right? Logically, you don't have to respond, or you can call them and you can go, "Yeah, hey, what's up? I've got a minute." Or it's your boss walking by and you want to run away, but you can't because you have to sit there and stay and work. So those are not, they can be real threats, but they're not life-threatening threats like a lion chasing you. But your body your nervous system goes, "Ah," and that flight response kicks in, and it wants you to escape and get away as quickly as you can, and get away so far so that you don't have to feel this feeling anymore. If you can not escape, maybe your mind says, "Well, can I overpower this? I can't get away from this, but maybe I can overpower it." And then it says, "Yes, well then fight back." And before we attack the threat, we want to attack the threat before it attacks us. And so we begin to take on those traits. We begin to get agitated and irritated, and we think, "Well, if I can get it before it gets me, then maybe I'll be able to weaken the threat and then possibly keep it from attacking me in the future." This, we're not going to go into it in this video, but this goes into like attachment styles and avoidance. Or maybe, you're always the one breaking up with someone, even though you're like, "Oh, I really liked them." But every time we start to get too close in a relationship, I end up breaking up with them or cutting it off. I don't know why. I really like that person. And maybe you notice this is a pattern within yourself, and that's that fight response. Like, you love this person, but you're always starting arguments with them. Why? Well, it's easier when you are the one that can hurt someone else first. It seems like you have more control over the situation, and you're not leaving yourself exposed to vulnerability and being the one that gets hurt. So you start fights in relationships, and when things are good, and you're like, I hate that I do that. Why do I do that? Well, that may be why. If you can't escape from it, if you can't overpower it, then maybe you can make it lose interest. So you freeze, and it just, if you sit there frozen for long enough, they're going to lose interest. This threat, right? Whether it's real or just a perceived threat. If I don't do anything for long enough, then they'll get bored and leave. The threat, right? Maybe they'll get bored and leave. So if you're a kind of person in a situation where you don't speak up and you don't say anything, your body goes into this freeze trauma response. Your nervous system, it freezes up, it closes up, it becomes rigid and tight, and it doesn't move. And you think, they'll make the decision for me. I don't have to. And all the while you're frozen, but your mind is not. It's sitting there going, "Come on, speak up. You're an idiot. What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And you're thinking, "I don't know. I don't know." So that is because it's a nervous system response, a trauma response. Like I said before, there's a fawn one, and the fawn is like the fourth trauma response. Today, we're going to actually look at collapse, though. This is a different one. Um, Fawn is the people pleaser and the one with very, very loose boundaries, right? Afraid to say no. The one who just steps in and thinks they can fix everything and just kind of like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'll just kind of go along with everything. That's fawning. And you think you're doing that. And it's a trauma response. You don't want people to be mad at you, or you don't want to have them reject you or not accept you. But that's not always the case. So sometimes what happens is this one collapse. If you're, this is a mind, probably can't tell because of my kindergarten drawing, but a mind and brain, when they disconnect from the body, like when they disassociate. I work with a lot of people who experience disassociation. They say it's like they're experiencing this from a different place, like they're floating above the scene. They're disassociated from their body. Their mind is floating, drifting off somewhere else. And in some cases, the collapse can be fainting. Like if the threat is a needle, like we talked about before, they might be able to faint. And in fainting or collapsing, it's the mind disconnecting with the body to try and avoid feeling the pain. In that case, the pain of the needle going into the body to give blood or receive an injection or whatever it is. A lot of people have a very real needle phobia. And yes, it can be worked through with hypnosis and rapid transformational therapy. But this is that collapse response. So in fact, this is very real. It's not talked about a lot. It's like, oh, I just, it's normal. It's normal to like collapse or faint if you give blood or something like that, or if there's a threat. But we're going to go into the collapse response and the four most common ways that it presents in clients. What it is also, it's often considered a defense response, and it's a last resort. So maybe these are the first resorts. You try and get out of it. Or, do I really have to get blood? I mean, can I gonna just do something else? Or you try and escape it. You try and fight back, or you just try and if that doesn't work. So then your body collapses. It's the defense response and like a last resort response. And it's how the nervous system often handles chronic pain, in inescapable trauma. You may find that you're just easily pass out. In a moment of trauma, this defense mode is something that can lessen the person experience of the pain. So if you're collapsed, you're kind of checked out, it can lessen the experience of the pain. But if after the trauma has passed, these interfere with a healthy life, and there's no logical reason why you should want to escape. Like, say it's the boss at work, and why you want to fight back, and why you fire off emails right away, or why you're just, uh, right? Or if you're collapsing, you're getting sick, you're disconnecting. Uh, there's no logical reason why it should still be happening, and it still is. So it's interfering with your ability to have a healthy life. And the four ways that it shows up in people, most common and most oftenly, are in the area of compliance and obedience. So if you're simply going through the motions of your life and you feel like you're just on autopilot, like a groundhog day, it's the same thing every day, and you feel detached from your bodily experiences, and your feelings no longer guide your actions. Like you just feel numb, you feel zoned out all the time. You don't really feel excited. You don't feel happy. You don't feel scared. You don't feel worried. You just really don't feel anything. For example, people who have experienced a lot of trauma in their past, maybe they're not afraid anymore. Well, that's not always healthy. You should be afraid of certain things, but if you feel nothing and you feel no fear, that keeps your brain, your body in that state. It's not natural or normal to not feel fear. And if you're not feeling it and you're always feeling it, one or the other, you may resonate with one over the other. How are you going to know when there actually is a real threat? When you are in real danger, if you're always in that state or never in that state. Um, it also shows up in interpersonal conflict. So you're shut down. You may have difficulty engaging with others or setting boundaries. That's kind of why it's like the not necessarily collapse response, but the fawn response are people who just completely shut down, collapsed, and you're just, yeah, I don't care, whatever. Because internally, you're completely shut down and collapsed. And because of that, You don't have any feelings around boundaries. Yeah, do whatever. I don't care, because you're internally shut down. So you don't even find it interesting to establish boundaries, because, well, that would mean that you'd have to care about something happening or not happening. And then if it did happen or someone crossed the line, you would implement a consequence that was relevant to that. So in interpersonal conflict, it significantly impacts relationships that you have if you're experiencing the collapse response. And I mean, it's not always like this kind of collapse, like internal collapse, where you just, I don't care, totally shut off. The collapse response can be linked to um, desire to isolate, self-isolation, social avoidance, social anxiety. It can make it really, really difficult to engage in daily activities, or even desire to engage in daily activities, like simple things like preparing meals, cooking, cleaning up, personal hygiene. Maybe you're just like, I don't really care. Like, why does it matter if I shower or shave? Who's going to care? Right? I don't really hang out with anyone anyway. And maybe this collapse, like I said, it's not always physical, but internal can make you just shut down inside and completely withdraw, self-isolate, not care, not have any desire or interest to go out into the world, to engage with other people, to interact. So it's an internal collapse, not always external. Another one can, and this is kind of like a scary one. This can make it difficult to be open to treatment, to be open to healing, to doing the work. It's called treatment resistant depression. It can lead to depression, so much so depression that you're resistant to treatment, like internally so shut down. And it's actually, this type of depression is what's known as learned helplessness. And in RTT, we get right to the very cause of the learned helplessness, where you learned this helplessness, where your inner unconscious mind developed these beliefs that you can't be helped. But that can lead to depression. And oftentimes people will go to a provider and receive medication to help with the symptoms of this depression. Uh, and it's important to know what you want for your life, and and be aware of what you've done. But this collapse response can lead to depression and this learned helplessness. And not saying that things won't work, but it can make it feel more difficult through the course of treatment. So that is why the modalities that I use with clients use the power of your mind. Your mind knows exactly where and how these events that are causing your nervous system to respond in a way that you want to escape, that you want to fight back, or that or your body freezes up or feels internally collapsed or shut down. It can take you straight to the source and to the root cause of that. So, like I said, I hope you found this video helpful in understanding a nervous system and trauma responses and the impact that it has in your life and on your life. And if you're interested in looking for or working with a holistic approach, working with the power of your unconscious mind to help you with these things, if they're significantly impacting or affecting your life, your relationships, your quality of life, perhaps keeping you from getting the very things that you want, deserve, need, and desire in your life, then I would love to connect with you and talk to you, see if we're a good fit to work together, and see if this modality is a good fit for you. It's not for everyone, and it may be for you. It may be the very thing that you are looking for, especially if you've been in a toxic relationship or a series or string of toxic relationships. You've probably experienced all of these. You just want to leave everything now. You're quick to anger, fight back, and maybe that's not the real you. Maybe the real you is kind and compassionate, but you feel like you're on defense all the time, or you freeze and you just can't do anything. You feel paralyzed, and internally you feel completely shut down. So, like I said, that's my area of specialty. If you would like to connect, you can always find out more information in the link below this video. And I hope that this information has been helpful to you in your journey, wherever you are, and would love to connect and talk more. Thank you guys, and I will see you very soon.